All right, we're back with our second episode of Strictly Business Podcast by the Sprinkler Repair Professionals. I'm Jason.
Mike, let's get it started, man. Let's get it started. So, hey, man, after our first podcast, man, it's crazy how much more confident I feel, man. This is great. I got a lot from that, Jason. I feel like, man, we've got a better feel of things. We got new shirts, man. These new shirts are great, dude. I like them. I do.
Very comfortable.
I had that bright green one on in the last episode. This blue one's just a little softer on the eyes for our viewers, right?
Shout out to Main Event in Rosenberg for hooking us up with these nice shirts. But yeah, I think it's good to just kind of get back into the swing of things. The first episode really just kind of told you a little bit about us and a little bit about our goal and vision for this podcast. This podcast, Mike has come up with a list of questions that we're going to kind of go through in terms of what we're looking to do as a business, and also too potentially what we're looking to do with this podcast. So again, I think our focus with this podcast is going to be on business altogether, not just sprinkler systems, not just the sprinkler industry, the irrigation industry, but business in general. So hopefully we'll be able to get a lot of our friends and people we look up to come on the podcast and talk about their experiences. So let's kind of jump into some of these questions, Mike, if you want to start asking away what you think, and I'll give my opinion on these things.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Jason. Again, this is strictly business. So the first question I have for you, Jason, and when we talk about these questions, we're referring to your business, correct? When we do these? Okay,
correct.
So my first question to you is, what are some of your short-term goals with Sprinkler Repair Professionals?
So, off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to mind is growing our business to a point where we can service the whole entire city of Houston and surrounding areas. As of right now, we're basically focused on the west side of town. So the immediate goal is going to be to hire enough, professionals and get enough business where we can service the whole entire area. Houston's a huge market. There's a lot of areas north of here, south, east, west, a lot of areas we haven't really tapped into yet that, in the short term, that's going to be our goal, is to expand into those areas. But in that growth, in that process, is going to be developing more processes inside our business that allow us to scale. So, how are we going to hire new people? How are we going to manage the influx of new business? How are we going to manage our inventory? How are we going to manage, all of those things, the systems that allow us to operate more efficiently, so that when we do bring on new people, they can kind of just jump right into the spot and don't have to, figure it out on their own.
Oh, great, man. Way to really, paint the picture there, man. We got to really let people know where we're headed, and I feel like a lot of what you just said is based off your experiences, right? With the failures that we talked about in the intro, right? The not dreaming too big, but being as efficient as possible, right? And making sure that we can reach these goals, right? And so naturally, my next question would be, what are your long-term goals with Sprinkler Repair Professionals?
The long-term goals would be, again, this is something that haven't had too much time to prepare for. A lot of these questions Mike came up with, and I read over them obviously before we started the podcast. But if I could think of the long-term goal would be to develop a system that is scalable to other locations, other cities. It's easy to get multiple locations inside the same city, but it'd be difficult to expand to another city. Let's just say Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, areas like that, Austin. So the goal, and the long-term goal, maybe the 5-year goal, would be to be able to service the whole entire city of Houston, north, south, east, and west. The 10-year goal would be to scale the business to a point where we can expand into other markets outside of this one, maybe even other states, depending on how ambitious we do get. But a lot of that, again, comes back to people. And, you can't, starting from the top, if you don't have good people answering the calls that are confident, that understand the system, the customers are not going to feel comfortable with you. If you don't have good management to manage, the incoming calls, to manage the office personnel, to manage IT and all those things, then you're not able to deliver on the back end. And then obviously it's not most important, but the thing that seems to be the most important is the technicians, the guys that are on the ground doing all the work. They have to be confident enough to do the sales and to upsell and to go after the big ticket sales. They also have to be competent enough to complete all the repairs. There's nothing worse than having to go back to a job because you didn't finish it or you weren't capable of doing the whole entire repair. So the goal is, as of right now, we have a 5-man team. All 5 of our guys can do everything. So it's incredible. But as we scale to 15, 20, 30 technicians, how is that going to carry over? What it comes down to is training. So we've got to develop a training process, a training program, Mike and I had talked about shooting videos for our people so that they can, in the field, if they run into an issue, they can pull up a library of videos that can show them what our process is for solving those problems. So long-term goal, just the immediate long-term goal is going to be to grow this business to a point where we can potentially grow into other markets, and that's Texas is a big state, and there's a lot of good markets here.
And let me just say, I going back to what you were saying, we talked about standard operating procedures, right? When we run into a situation in the field, so our guys have things to turn to. We do give out a higher manual packet, right? And maybe even having days whenever we can do trainings and stuff like that. So not to go too much into that because some of my other questions kind of lead into that, but as we talk about the goals, right? We talk about there's going to be challenges, there's going to be obstacles to face, there's going to be things that are going to come up that I think we talked about it in the intro as well. Is that once you reach one, you get over one goal, then it's just the next one, right? The things just get bigger and they just get things expand and things are coming our way fast. And again, what you say, people and personnel are very, very important when we talk about these things. So my next question would be is, what role do you see plan on playing as we develop, as we grow, right? Right now, you're pretty hands-on with everything, right? From taking the calls, dispatching the guys, to even going and ordering the parts, the inventory, and stuff like that. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see Jason as the owner, CEO, and founder, as someone that's very involved in everyday processes as we grow?
That's a very good question, and it's hard to answer because there's probably 20 different things that I could be doing right now. I guess my role moving forward is going to be overseeing all the other managers. So the goal is to develop a department for everything, right? An HR department that deals with hiring, firing, everything that goes into HR, right? And then a sales department, then someone that deals with the CSRs, the customer service representatives, accounting, logistics, parts, basically having people in place to do all of those items for me. And then my role in that would just be to hold those people accountable, right? Yeah. So it's pretty standard across the board in any business that you should be working as the owner, you should be working on your business, not in your business. However, that's a process and it takes time to get to there. So, we've been in business for almost 15 years now. However, because of a lot of the mistakes and decisions that I've made over the years that kind of set us back, I'm still working in my business as well as on my business. Now, on the same token, I enjoy working in the business, and it allows me to, save on payroll, save on operation costs, and also still have a hands on everything that's happening. So I think it takes a focus and it takes a day-to-day grind and oversight. You can't ever sit back and I think I hear people talk about sometimes mailbox money and running a business that just you don't have to do anything with, and oh yeah, I got a business and I have no day-to-day oversight. I meet with my people once a week, once a month. Now, although that is attainable, we are not anywhere near that yet. So that's more of a goal to get to a point where the people that I have in place, like Mike, like other people that come on board in the future, they take accountability for their roles. They have the processes. A lot of times they'll set the processes, they'll adjust the processes. And so as we grow, my goal is to basically take a step back from the day-to-day operations and just oversee all the people that are in those roles, because what that'll allow me to do is to go out and expand to other markets, grow our business, grow our customer base, and provide a better opportunity for more people.
Man, that's great, Jason. I'll say, coming from owning my own business, it's gonna be tough, man, because I know you have so much passion for this business. You've like you said, 15 years, the ups, the downs, and then you bring people in and they're changing and tweaking your processes, but it comes down to the trust, right? And you have to be able to trust those people. If I'm not mistaken, you've got to be able to, sit back and know that they are doing the best thing possible for your business, right? Maybe not the way you would do it, but you have to be open-minded, right? And that's a tough thing to do when you've been here since the bottom, as they say, right? Since you started this thing, there was nobody before you, and now someone wants to come in and try to adjust something. It's like, man, but you've got to be able to see those things. And I think that's what comes down to a great owner, a great leader, someone that takes a business to the next level, is somebody that can be coachable, right? The word's coachable, I believe.
I've got a good story to kind of go along with this. We started this business in 2009, and it's gone through many iterations here. We started off different name, different business plan. But I remember the first truck that I got for my business, that thing was my baby. It was my truck. I was driving it everywhere. I was driving it for work, and then I was driving it personally. I still remember the first employee that I brought on that took that truck and started running that truck, cutting yards. I remember the thought of being like, oh my God, what's going to happen if they get into an accident? What's going to happen if, they're out there and I can't control what they're doing? And so a lot of it is, being able to let go of those things. Now, being in a position we're in now, we have multiple trucks, multiple employees, and, trucks are just a tool. It's just a tool for us to go out there and do the job. There's no emotional attachment to those vehicles anymore. Now, people are different.
Yeah.
And, the people are the most important asset. This is cliche, but it's true. You're definitely your most important asset. They're also your most expensive asset. But as we grow, allowing those people to do their job and to take risks on their own and fail on their own and make mistakes. It's not my job. I think a really good coach, is not somebody who criticizes you when you fail. More or less, they talk with you and come up with options and other ways to get the job done. Like Mike had just said, that might not be the way that I would do it, but that doesn't mean that my way is the best way. So if our team members, they're going to have a different perspective than I do. I can only see from my perspective. Mike can only see from his perspective. But if you have a team of people around you, the sharing of advice, the sharing of experiences in that group is going to help everybody get better. So you have to let your team members make mistakes and do things their own way. We have multiple different technicians, and they all might do things their own way. They have a process that they follow, right? We meet the client, we introduce ourselves, we run the inspection, we provide them with a quote, line item by line item quote. Once they approve, we get the repairs done. There's a standard operating procedure on how we should do the repairs. If you've got to cut and glue pipe, while the glue is drying, you can go out and do something different, like the controller or the sprinkler head, something that doesn't have to glue. So you're being efficient. However, the way they do it, the method they do it, the tools they use is really up to them. All of our guys provide their own tools. So, one guy might want to use a sawzall to cut a root. Another guy might want to use loppers. Another guy might want to use an axe. As long as they're efficient, I'm not so caught up in how they do it. I'm more concerned with the result. And as long as they get to a point where the customer's happy and the job is done right, then that's good enough for me.
Cool, man. Well, that's great. I mean, again, there's as they say, there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? So, that leads us into our next question, or my next question for you, Jason, is as we continue to grow, you're going to need help, right? We're going to need people. Will those people come from the outside, or do you believe in promoting from within? How do you go about it?
That's another good question, and I think it can go both ways. Honestly, the way I see it right now, a majority of our employees are irrigation technicians. They're out there doing repairs every single day. What we had talked about is when we open a new location that might be a little bit further outside of this market, we could potentially promote one of our best guys who, not necessarily the best as far as skill, ability, billables, but most reliable, most accountable, best attitude, most willing to do what it takes, put in the hours. So I would ideally, yes, would like to promote from it within. However, there's certain roles that you have to bring in people from the outside. Like I can't promote one of my licensed irrigation technicians to be the accountant,
no.
right? I can't promote one of those guys to do HR. I can't promote one of those guys to do IT. However, I can promote one of those guys to be like in charge of inventory. I can promote those guys to do sales.
Yeah.
Area estimates, basically. Now, however, I'm not saying that people can't do multiple things, but in order to run a successful business that scales, you have to have people who are professional and pros at what they do, right? So HR's got to be an HR person.
Yeah.
You have one of our technicians, they might be able to conduct a great interview. However, are they going to be following rules and practices that that are legal? You're out there asking people how old they are and questions you can't really ask, in interviews, stuff like that. As well as like IT, right? Obviously, you don't want somebody learning on the job how to fix computers and how to fix your technical side of things. So that's somebody that has to have that set of skills. But I think both is a good answer. And as you scale the company, now you have people in those multiple roles, and the company gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then yes, when you already have people in marketing, you already have people in sales, you already have people in management, you can definitely promote from within. But I think that's just one of those hurdles that we have to face. Mike and I have been talking a lot recently about just how we're going to scale this business and what's going to happen, because we know that we can go out there and we can get the business. We know we can go out there and hire new employees. But the unknown is kind of the scariest thing, so.
Right. When to do that, right?
Yeah,
When when is the right time to go and do these things? When is it time to hire the next new guy? We work in a business, especially. I mean, I've learned real quick that it's a seasonal business, right? We know, this is our go time, March to, I think you said October, November-ish, right? And then it kind of slows down for a little bit. But our job right now is to figure out not to have those slow times, so
Absolutely.
that we're pulling guys in that maybe their company that they work at hasn't figured that out, and we can get the best guys in the industry. And that's one thing you've always wanted to do, is make sure we have the best guys putting the foot forward.
Well, what we had, this is technically, we're in our second year of doing only sprinkler system repairs. And this past winter, I'm proud to say that all of our team members, pretty much were working 35 to 40 hours a week. So we didn't really have as much of a lull as I had expected. Now, were there weeks when it was like freezing cold and nobody was calling? Absolutely. However, I'm very proud of the fact that we were still able to work through the winter. And so every week we're getting new customers. Every month we're getting hundreds of new customers. Every quarter we're getting 400, 500, 600 new customers. So that carries over. And now in the wintertime, our Rolodex is 2 times as big as it was the year before, 2 times as big as it was after that. So the more customers we get, the more people we're able to service and keep happy, the more opportunities we're going to have in the winter. Because the hardest part about this business is keeping people on board before you need them, right? And so you get to a point where it's a little bit slower than it would be this time of year in the winter, but then you get a freeze. And suddenly you're bombarded with calls, and you need to have your people. And so, although yes, this is a seasonal business, we are still providing, winterization services. We're providing services year round, because a lot of people keep their sprinkler systems on year round. It doesn't really it'll get really cold for a couple of days here, but it really doesn't stay really cold. So a lot of customers, a lot of people that we work with are turning their systems off and then turning them back on a week later. So there's always something to be done.
Man, I just want to say, man, congratulations. I got to pat ourselves on the back. We just had our best month since we've started this.
Yeah.
Right.
March was our best month ever in the 15-year history of our business, and last week was our best week ever revenue wise.
Wow.
And obviously, the better the revenue in our business, we have a pretty set margin across the board. So the more revenue we do, the profit margin is just going to go up because of that. It's a set margin, but we make more. So obviously last month was our best month ever. This month is already on track to break last month. And I anticipate that it's going to continue to do that through this year. And then of course, coming into next year, even bigger and even bigger. So we've got a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of hurdles that we still have to cross. There's probably a list of 20 things right now that we need to do, Mike and I. And we're just kind of taking them as they come. Man,
that's great, man. It's got to feel good, Jay. I mean, 15 years just going through it, and as a business owner myself, right? I did 5 years of it, and it was time. It was time for me to figure out something else. So, like we were talking earlier, it's like the things you've had to do that people will never see, right? They'll never know what you had to do to get to this point, right? They'll never know the things that you had to go through to get to this point. It's incredible. And I read stories about it, right? I read Gary Vee's book. I listen to various podcasts, other podcasts. Shout out to all the podcasts out there. But, you hear these stories of these guys, and there's things that you're like, man, I don't know if I could ever do that. But if you're not willing to do that, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So, again, I'm not here to discourage anybody. We're not here to discourage anybody at all. But, I just think about when you're going to be an entrepreneur, there's no limits. There's no boundaries. There's no script, right? If you want to be a doctor, you want to be you want to be an engineer, right? You go to school, there's certain things, there's parameters. But as an entrepreneur, there's no boundaries there, man.
Well, to touch on that, we were talking earlier on the car ride over here. When you start a business, a lot of times the biggest problem that people have as business owners, or in any aspect of life, is, I've heard this said many times, you're not able to get out of your own way, right? So all you see through your eyes and your eyes alone. People who are really smart and intelligent aren't necessarily capable of doing great things more so than the average person. They just are able to ask the right questions and get the right people to help them. Like, for example, when I started this business, I didn't even think to ask about taxes. I didn't even think to ask about, what should I do? What should I do in this situation if I have an employee that acts like this? Should I document everything? Should I write them up even if I don't want to? Being a business owner is not about being, cold or being like a rich asshole or whatever. These people always think that as a business owner, a lot of these business owners get a bad rep because they're just, what's the right word I'm looking for here? They're not like robots, but they're very methodical in what they do. There's a process for everything.
Yeah.
And so you have to make the right decision. And if you don't cover your ass, if you don't do what you're supposed to do in the situations, if you don't research, if you just jump into things without thinking about it, you're going to be left out in the cold. One of the worst decisions I ever made, we were doing large commercial install projects. I was winning these $250,000 jobs, and I was the low bidder. And it felt great to win the job. However, I had no idea what I was doing. I was dropping the ball on the estimating. I was dropping the ball on the installations. But I would go out and buy equipment that I thought I needed. I went and bought a Bobcat that was like $80,000 and financed it over 5 years.
Man.
And when I could have just gone out and rented a Bobcat for 2 weeks.
We didn't even know how to work on it, dude.
For $1,500. Instead of paying $1,500 a month for 6 years or whatever I did. So there's a lot of different things, and you have to be able to get out of your own way. You have to be able to ask the right questions, because nobody's going to call you up and tell you how to do it. That's in any aspect of life. No one's going to call you up and tell you to look into the tax laws, look into the sales tax, to look into proper operations, make sure you have the manuals in place, make sure you have the right paperwork for your employees. Those things are things you have to learn the hard way, and you always live to fight another day. What I always say is, and I may have said this in the first podcast, I try not to get my ass kicked by the same thing twice. If I lose to something, if I get beat up by something, I move forward doing things the right way after that. So if you forget to pay your taxes, you'll end up with a huge tax bill. The next year, start paying them. Pay them on time. Sales tax, pay it on time. Make sure you're collecting it. You may not even know you need sales tax. I do work with a tree company, and I had a conversation with the owner probably about 2 years ago, and I said, hey, you're never charging me sales tax. Now, at the end of the day, if a contractor is working for me and I charge the sales tax and I pay the sales tax on the entire job, the contractor doesn't necessarily have to do it, but they didn't even know about it. And I told them, I said, hey, you need to make sure you stay on top of this. You're running a multi-million-dollar company. This is going to kick your ass one day. And so, whether or not he moved forward with that, I never know. I didn't really follow up with him on it, but, very rarely are you going to get advice from people unless you seek it out.
But even then, Jason, we were talking again, going back to our car ride, and I did this too as an entrepreneur. We were saying earlier, even if you seek the advice, are you going to take it? Are you going to listen?
And are you going to get the right advice?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, you can seek the question, should I do this or should I not? But are you going to listen? In my case, I was I used to talk with Jason a little bit. I talked with a few other peers of mine or 2 other business owners, and they were giving me advice. Maybe that's not enough. You didn't raise enough money, or maybe you need more. And I was like, no, it's just my next opportunity. Like you're so excited about being an entrepreneur now, and you're gonna do it for yourself, and you'll do whatever it takes. And it's not all that it's playing out to be. And again, I'm not here to discourage anybody, and I don't think Jason is either. It's just our experience. We're sharing our experiences with you.
Well,
in this world. So.
Another really good story I've got here, and for anybody out there that's a parent, you're going to understand this, right? I'm just going to consider myself as a child, right? My dad told me a lot of different things and things I should have been doing, and I just kind of brushed it off, right? I remember being at my buddy Daniel Elkowitz owns a business called Fort Bend Martial Arts. It's a Taekwondo academy here. He was like an Olympic alternate on the team. Guy's incredible, great guy. I've known him my whole life. My daughter, she was probably 6 years old at the time, was taking Taekwondo from him and his other coaches. And I remember going in there saying, Daniel, man, my daughter doesn't listen to anything I tell her to do, but in there with you guys, she does everything you say. And he immediately turned around and was like, my kids don't listen to me either. So yeah, it's all about seeking out the right people. But then when you get the advice, following through with it, because people who have done it, for longer, again, it doesn't mean they're better, doesn't mean they make more money than you. However, the experiences that they've gone through are probably significantly better. That's why in a lot of these other cultures, the elders are the ones that people look up to. It's not the celebrities or the artists or the athletes. It's the people who have been around the most and experienced the most. They're the ones that have failed the most. Therefore, they can provide you with the best advice. So. Man,
you're right. Same with my son. But let's get into our next question. How are you measuring growth, Jason, with this company? We talked about this a little bit. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. Macro, micro, systems in place, employees, business, revenue. But what is your all tell? What do you compare? Do you compare this month to last year? Do you do a year? What are you doing? How are you doing that?
So, good question, great question, and I can kind of elaborate on this a little bit. So I remember going back probably 6 or 7 years ago. I would brag to people when they asked me that I had like 5 or 6 crews, and I had, each crew had like 4 or 5 guys on it. We had like 20 employees at one point, but we were making no money. And it was logistically a nightmare. We had, 5 guys in a truck with the trailer and equipment. We were burning fuel. We were not taking care of our equipment. Guys were probably sitting around not working. It was just a complete nightmare. So at one point in time, I would have told you the more trucks and the more employees you have. But now, knowing what I do know, I hate to kind of focus on the financial side of it, but it's all about the bank account, man.
Yeah.
And if your bank account is constantly growing, that doesn't necessarily mean your business is growing, but if you're making more money, if your margins are increasing, then that's what I consider growth. You can do $1 million in revenue and make no money, or you can do $1 million in revenue and make 30% margin. You can make 10% margin. So you don't necessarily have to grow your revenue to grow your business.
Gotcha.
I think it's all about net margins at the end of the day.
Wow. I mean, I think you gave me an example. I mean, again, I used to seek advice from you when I was running my business. You're like, hey man, you go to a restaurant, they got great food, people are in there, it's all good, and then the next week you try to go back and they're gone. Yeah. It's like, you can have great food, you can do everything right, but if you're not making money, are you really running a business? Are you really doing, what are you doing? I mean, what's the answer to that, right? Like, you can be running a landscape business and have 20 employees, but if you're making no money,
absolutely,
what are you doing?
Absolutely.
What are we doing?
So I think a big thing is, a big indicator of your success too is the type of people that you have working for you. There was a point in time when, like I said, we had 20 employees, and every day 4 or 5 guys would not show up. So it's almost like you're just hiring anybody with a pulse that'll show up and do the job. You get to a point when you grow your business and you develop, an environment that people can succeed in. You don't really have to worry about that anymore. I mean, I honestly cannot tell you the last time I had an employee no call, no show.
Wow.
It just doesn't happen.
Wow.
Our guys have PTO, they have insurance benefits, they get paid really, really well for what they're doing. Sometimes they miss work. Sometimes they get sick. Sometimes they're late. But the communication is there. I'm never wondering, oh man, where's this guy at? And there's nothing worse than that as a business owner when, as the owner, right, and you know this too, right? You're supposed to have a barista coming in, and you end up, they no call, no show. Now you're there standing at the counter serving people. So I can think of countless restaurants that my wife and I have enjoyed over the years that just closed down, and you're thinking to yourself, man, their food is incredible. Their service was great. The owner was nice. Everything was great, but they didn't make any money. So that really is the biggest indicator. Not that profit margins are the only thing, but the more money you make, the better environment you can create for your people, right? Like 3 years ago, the thought of providing health insurance for my people was unheard of. I wouldn't, where am I going to get the money to pay for that? I can barely get the money to pay our bills, right? Yeah. But I think there's a point in time, there's a shift, and I remember when it went from point A to point B. Point A being living week to week, check to check, basically, even though we're running a business. And then point B is where there's money in the bank, you've got work lined up, you're not stressing about paying the bills. All the bills are paid on time. You're not paying late fees. You're not paying interest. You're not paying penalties. The people can feel that. Your team members can feel that. Nobody wants to work for a business that's bouncing checks.
Right.
We may have never bounced any paychecks, but God, I can't tell you how many times my guys went to go put money on put parts on the credit card, and it got declined because we were maxed out on the credit card.
Wow.
And I mean, that's, from the standpoint of an owner, it's embarrassing, but think about the employees, the way they feel. They're there trying to buy something that they need, and the credit card bounces. And so, doesn't provide a very confident work environment for your people. So I think you got to keep your people happy. You got to have money in the bank. The more money in the bank you have, not necessarily the nicer things you can have, but the nicer package you can provide for everybody. And at the end of the day, people want to feel secure, and they want to feel secure in their job, in their relationships, and it's also allowed me to be more of a mentor to my people and less of a tyrant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm more relaxed.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've noticed it from the first time working with you and working with you now. I think I've said that. We've had that in numerous conversations. I think going back to what you said, you mentioned EO. I think that's been a big thing. But one thing that we talked about that I didn't write down, but I want to elaborate on is. And I see this in you, and it's something I'm working on personally, and I think it's very important in business is the constant everyday drive or the habits that you have, right? I know Jason, if you were to pull up at your house, you know when you're there, you're gone. You're going to work out every morning at 4 o'clock. You're back scheduling the guys. I mean, your habits are undeniable. Whether that was learned in college, like you say, you did go to college. You say you don't use your degree, but were those things habits that were driven into you, or that you learned at a young age, or how did you form these habits? Because they're not easy. I really want to know.
It's a good question, man. Honestly, I can't really pinpoint it. I was a college athlete, and one of the biggest things that I learned as a college athlete was to be accountable. I played baseball at TCU and a couple other places, and we had this saying at TCU, it was, don't be that guy, which meant don't be the one to mess up. Don't be the one that's late. Don't be the one to skip class. Don't be the one, because everybody got punished. So a perfect example, my freshman year in college, there was a guy on our team, a good friend of mine, still friends with him. He's a MLB ball player now. He's been in the league for almost 20 years now. Incredible player, great guy. And he had mentioned to the trainer on our team that I had eaten pizza the night before. I was supposed to be on a diet. And Travis Roost was the name of the coach. He was a great strength and conditioning coach at TCU. I still think about him and how he used to motivate us. He would come up behind you when you're doing squats and slap you on the back and say, "Get your mind right." And I was like, shit, he just slapped the shit out of me, almost knocked me over, but then you go squat 400 pounds, right? But so long story short, this teammate of mine mentioned to the coach that I had eaten pizza the night before, and he just went berserk. And he took all of us out to the football field, the practice football field. It was turf, and made everybody on the team except for me roll 100 yards. You just lay down on the ground and you just roll. And if anyone's ever, done that before, it doesn't take but 10 or 15 yards before you start to throw up. So I'm literally sitting there on the sidelines watching my teammates die and struggle. And, the workout was over. I probably took everybody 30 minutes to do this. And I don't even know if everybody even made it the whole way. Maybe a couple guys like Stuart Musselwhite, who's a business owner. I ran into him in Chapel Hill a few weeks ago. He was like a bulldog, man. He could do anything. But I'm pretty sure that nobody really made it. Everybody got sick, right? And so at the end of the workout, at the end of this punishment, coach kind of got everybody in the middle, and he was like, "Well, Trough, don't fuck up." And then I proceeded to get taught a lesson in the locker room after. It wasn't that bad, but the guys were definitely pissed off at me. There may have been some punches thrown in my direction. And but it's a lesson learned. And I wasn't the only guy on the team to mess up. I had to run many times because of other players. But I think the accountability, I still carry that with me. That don't be that guy. And then once you own your own business, if I make a mistake, if I don't have a routine, if I sleep, I can't tell you the last time I slept in. I don't. I set my alarm every night and I wake up on time. If I oversleep, just imagine how is that going to look to my guys? I can come up with some excuse, I'm sure, but. So really, the habits just kind of formed later on in life, probably in my mid 30s. I kind of cut out the things in my life that weren't providing me value, and started doing the things that were. And I pretty much eat Chipotle for lunch like every single day, right? I eat pretty much the same thing for breakfast every day. You can ask my wife this. If it was up to me, we'd eat at the same places all the time. She's like, "Well, where do you want to go?" I'm like, "I can eat something anywhere, right?"
Yeah.
But I have a routine. I have habits that I go through, and it's allowed me to conserve my energy and conserve my bandwidth to focus on things that come up every single day, to fight the fires. If I never knew what I was doing day to day, I would get stressed out and worn out anytime something happened. But as a business owner, it's like you're just waiting for some shit to happen.
Right.
So you got to prepare the things that you can, so you're ready to tackle the things that you can't prepare for.
I mean, as we spoke about, you said that capacity, right? If you don't even have to think about those things in the morning, if you already got this and all that done, right? You're ready. We're ready for those things that are going to come in, those speed bumps that are going to arise during the day. You have better patience with your guys when they have problems, right? Because as you said, it starts at the top. So if you're stressed out, they're going to feel the stress.
And then you lose all your employees.
Yeah, and that's those are the backbone of this company, Going back to what you said about, everybody getting in trouble, that's a military thing. With my Army days, if one guy was slacking, we all paid for it, right? And so it's the accountability, and again, I'm working on it. This guy's habits are rubbing off on me. I'm trying to get better as well, but I believe that as a unit, if we can all push that same like-minded thinking and do the best things and put our best foot forward. It's like when you have that team and you have that that camaraderie, right? That energy that everybody's going to try to put their best foot forward, whether you're the owner, whether you're the sales guy, whether you're the tech, whatever your role is, it's important, right? Everybody's role is important. And if everybody does that, then the growth of this company and the growth of what you're doing as a business is gonna show. It's gonna show, and other people are gonna see that.
Absolutely, lead by example.
Yes,
what they say,
yes, yes, for sure. Last question I got today on Strictly Business is innovation, right? We live in a world that's ever evolving, right? From technology to we were speaking about it today, AI, stuff like personal callers or robots and stuff like that. Where do you see it playing into what we do? Where do you see it going? What kind of things do you like? What do you dislike? What elaborate on that a little bit for me.
That's another good question, and I honestly don't really know, how much AI and robots and stuff like that would affect our business. However, I can say that innovation is coming in water conservation, the areas of water conservation. I think that's a big issue moving forward. So a lot of the innovation, in my opinion, is probably in our industry is probably going to center around conserving water. How are we able to get the job done while using as minimal water as possible? Water waste is a big issue with sprinkler systems. Leaks, but spray heads. There's a lot of new technology coming out in the industry that allows you to pinpoint leaks, notifies you immediately. There's certain smart controllers you can hook up a flow meter to and a master valve, and as soon as a leak happens, you get an email telling you, hey, you've got a leak.
Wow.
All the way down to the spray heads, and from rotors and regular spray heads, there's now MP rotors. These have been out for a while, but they conserve water. There's lots of innovation coming. I think, me and Mike had talked about, I still reach out to our customers when we have team members on the way. There's a lot of service programs that will automatically text the customers, text them the night before to confirm the appointment, text when you're on the way, follow up with a review, text automatic. So automating all the things that can be automated is important. I know a lot of guys who own different types of businesses that have their call centers overseas. That's not going to work for us because I feel like for our type of business, people want to talk to somebody local. But everybody here knows when you call a credit card company or you call your cell phone provider or these big corporations, you know those calls are getting routed overseas. It's innovation. You can hire 6 people for the price of 1 over there. And they're still living a good life, and you're getting the job done. There's accountability there. So I think the biggest innovation in our industry is probably going to be in the products and the parts that are offered. I don't know what's coming next. Drip irrigation, micro irrigation, MP rotors. These are big things that come along with that. But I think that was a great podcast, man. I think that was a good question to end on. I'm excited to continue doing this every single week. Hopefully by our next episode, maybe we'll bring on a business owner to talk with us and start introducing you guys to some of the people around us that are influential and also start to learn. I think my biggest goal from this, me and Mike, we sit here and we talk about stuff all day, every day, but our goal is to bring some new people on here and learn some more from them. So
again, I'm Mike, Strictly Business, the Sprinkler Repair Pros podcast.
I'm Jason. We'll see you next time.
Like it. Man, that was easy to talk when you have the questions like that. How long? 38? It was 30 minutes, bro.